one.
Well, thank you, folks, and it was a short break, but a necessary break. I want to welcome the people from Maine that are with us, and I want to ask Dan Smith if he will introduce you folks.
Thanks, Bobby. So our next two speakers are going to speak to us about the Maine Milk Commission and the operation of the vendor's fee and the tier program. They can introduce themselves. I need to disclose that Julie Marie Bickford, the Executive Director of the Maine Milk Commission. Maine Milk Commission has been my client for 15 years. Oh, I did it backwards, didn't I? I don't work for the Maine Milk Commission. Let me start over. I work for the Maine Dairy Industry Association, of which Julie Marie is the Executive Director. And the MDIA has been my client since I think 2006. We've worked on federal order issues. I haven't had anything to do with operation of the state programs. I've only worked on behalf of MDIA for federal initiatives that MDIA and hearings. I've represented MDIA in a number of federal order hearings over the years as well. So with that disclosure, I yield the floor to Julie and Tim. And please identify yourselves for the record.
Okay, thank you, Dan. I am Julie Marie Bickford, the Executive Director of the Maine Dairy Industry Association, which is a trade association representing all of the dairy farmers, cattle dairy farmers in Maine who are shipping milk into commercial markets. And we do have some voluntary members who are bottling and selling raw milk straight from the farm.
Good morning. My name is Tim Drake. I'm the Executive Director for the Maine Milk Commission. We oversee pricing, retail and wholesale, and payments to farmers in the state of Maine. I also am the administrator of the Maine Milk Pool and the Maine Tier Program.
Okay. And we have a PowerPoint that'll just kind of walk through our sections. We were charged with giving you a backdrop explanation of Maine's Milk Commission, its functions, its operations, the Maine Tier Program, which is actually called the Maine Dairy Stabilization Program, but Tier for short, and how that came into being and how it functions for our state's dairy farmers. And then some background information on the Maine Dairy Industry Association as an entity and an avenue for advocacy for Maine's dairy farmers. So with that, I think I'll start my presentation and see if we can share my screen. Let me pop this up. I'm not the most technically savvy person in the world, so we'll see how I can do this. Okay, that's the screen I want to share. Can everyone see?
Yep.
Okay.
Looks good.
Very good.
Good, then I will start it and make it look official. There we go.
I think we can dispense with the
Yeah, the next one.
introductions.
There we go.
As most of you undoubtedly know, 1937 Congress passed the Agricultural Marketing Act to help farmers secure a fair price from milk dealers, and this created a uniform federal system for milk pricing in the U.S. The state of Maine already had created the Maine Milk Commission in 1935 to basically do the same thing in Maine. As you can see, we're stuck up there like a thumb in the country, and milk only goes one way. It either stays in Maine or it heads south. We don't ship anything to Canada. They don't want it, and we can't do it. You notice that we appear, we're in the white, we're again like a thumb sticking out there, which means we're not part of the federal milk marketing order. However, we use the federal milk marketing order 1 price as a basis for our price, and about 25, or I think it's more than 25 of that goes out, probably closer to 50% now, goes out to stores in New England. Both, they go from the HB Hood plant and the Oakhurst plant, which are both located in Portland, Maine. As you can see, we started in 1935 to help our dairy industry with the Maine Milk Control Law, which enables the Milk Commission to function. It all started with farmers not getting paid by dealers, processors, and bankruptcies and so on. I don't think anybody here was around in the 1930s, but my history says that it was a tough time then for everybody. Our goal, and it still is today, is to ensure that Maine consumers have access to a consistent supply of quality milk produced in Maine farms and processed by Maine dealers and distributed through local retailers. This is the Maine dealers are getting harder and harder to accomplish, but we still do. The Milk Commission has 5 members, 4 of whom are appointed by the governor and must be ratified by the Senate, and they serve 4 years staggered, so that there's not too many no vacancies that overlap. And then the Commissioner of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry appoints another member, usually, and it has been as long as I can remember, someone on staff within the department. They may have no official business or professional connection or relation to any segment of the dairy industry, which I think is crucial to ensuring that we have a impartial judgment. I worked for the Maine Harness Racing Commission, which doesn't have this in their statute, and it's not a pretty picture. We're financed by a 5-cent per hundredweight fee on milk sold in Maine by licensed dealers. We receive no general fund tax monies. I want to point out that 5 cent has been there since 1935 and hasn't been increased. Among the specific powers granted by the legislature, we have the authority to set minimum prices for retail and wholesale. We're authorized to audit. We have subpoena powers, and we have audited in the past. We don't like to. It's basically on a as-needed basis now. Statute says that we must conduct a study every 3 years on the cost of production, which is the basis for the commission setting a producer margin, the cost of dealer margin, cost of processing. We use that to set the dealer margin within the pricing structure, and also the cost of retailing, the retailer margin, which sets the retail margins in the pricing structure. No, this looks real busy. This is basically our minimum price sheet. It shows the minimum wholesale and retail prices. We use the information, as I said, of the studies to determine the various margins. I'm the administrator of the Maine Milk Pool. Really isn't a function of the Maine Milk Commission. It's charged to the Commissioner of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry, but they have historically basically contracted with the Maine Milk Commission staff to administer the pool and the tier program. The pool was created in 1983, and we assess the producer margin, which is the cost of production adjustment, and the pool is based off that price, and that's on Class 1 sales in Maine. Initially, it was set at 15 cents, but as I said, the studies are done every 3 years, and a margin is set each month after hearing testimony by the commission. We would love to be able to put it exactly what is determined in the studies, but we cannot due to the fact that if we did so, I don't believe we'd be selling any Maine milk in Maine. It would be like brought in from outside. And this basically shows how the pool program works, the flow of funding. We distribute the funds from the milk processors that we collect. We're in the process of doing that as we speak today. They send it to us, it's assessed, and they send it to us, and we do the calculations and send it back out to co-ops and processors for payments to the farms. We have a 30-day, in our statute, we have a 30-day notice where a retailer or a dealer must tell a customer, a dealer must tell a retailer within 30 days when they plan to not ship to them. We also, the department has a rule where if a processor shuts off a producer, they have to give them 30-day notice also. This graphic basically shows the average price of Maine consumer, and what our retail price, this is based on August of this year. Minimum price paid to the processor, which is the wholesale minimum. This figures out the Maine farmers' short-run break-even costs. I believe this is an average, Julie, of all four levels. And
That's correct.
Minimum price paid to the farmer based on all these factors. As milk check in Maine is the blend price, over order premium, quality and volume premiums, components, etc. State premiums, which is set by the Maine Milk Commission. Out of the farmer's milk check, Trish, oh, this is Julie. I'm sorry. I'm raining on your parade.
That's okay.
I was on a roll. I've been known to go ad lib a little bit.
That's all right. Basically, we're going to talk a lot today about what goes into, what we try to put into the farmer's check, but it's important to recognize what comes out. And so I know you talked a lot this morning already about transportation. That's obviously a huge cost. We pay 15 cents for promotion. The farmers pay their share, or 2.5 cents, towards the funding of the Milk Commission. There is a 1 cent mandatory deduction to fund MDIA, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Farms who belong to cooperatives are required to pay dues and marketing adjustments and equity share payments. Again, marketing charges. CWT program, that's something I actually have to check whether that's still in effect or not. No, yeah, some of these are slides that I've been using for a number of years. And then the farm also has other designated payments. If they have loan payments or monthly bills, sometimes get deducted right out of the check. So before it even gets in the farmer's hands, it's definitely gotten a whole lot smaller.
At this point, Julie, I'm going to just jump in and say that that the designated payments, loan payments, and monthly bills comes after the Maine Milk Commission fee and MDIA. Sometimes the processors and co-ops get a little confused about that. and we have to reinforce that they come last.
Right. And so the reason for that is sometimes there's not enough money in the farmer's
Correct.
check to pay everything. And the Maine Milk Commission, MDIA, those are all, and promotion, those are all statutorily mandated. And so they need to come before any other payments. All right. We all know that technology has improved a lot of things. It's basically enabled us to make more milk with fewer cows and capitalize on efficiencies. And that really, for the most part, is the lifeblood of your average farm, because farmers are price takers, not price setters. In other words, they really have very little input governing what price they're going to get paid for their milk. So being able to manage things on the expense side is often one of the few flexible items that a farmer has at their disposal. And there really is a pricing disconnect between what people are paying, as you saw in the previous graphic of the milk jug, of what people are paying in the stores for milk and what the farmer is getting for their price. And so that is actually one of the foundational motivations for MDIA, is trying to make sure, is there some way that farmers can get their appropriate share out of the marketplace. And you'll find I do talk a lot about fluid milk. That is driven by the fact that our major processors in the state are fluid milk processors. In fact, we have an HB Hood plant and an Oakhurst dairy plant that are two of very significant fluid processors for the region, and they are supplied almost primarily by Maine Milk. So the state of Maine has
actually for the, excuse me, Julie, the
Sure.
last several years, they've been 100% Maine Milk.
Thank you. The state of Maine has a history of kind of trying to find ways, to think outside the box to help us to survive. As you saw, geographically, we stick out like a thumb. We're at the geographic end of the line, and it makes us a little bit more sensitive to things. And so we have a tendency to try to, find creative ways to help us be able to not only to compete, but to continue to serve all of our markets and all of our citizens. So in 1984, the Maine dairy farmers created a voluntary group to talk about various things facing them on the farm and find ways to think outside the box. And that was the creation of the Maine Dairy Industry Association. But it was a voluntary organization. So then, working with state leaders, in 1991, the state passed the Maine Dairy Farm Stabilization Act and the vendor fee. This program basically collected 5 cents a gallon flat fee on milk processed in Maine, and then pooled that money and paid it back out of a dedicated account back to Maine farmers. So, if you think of it, very similar in basic concept to the Northeast Dairy Compact Commission. Well, Massachusetts thought that was a great idea, and they enacted similar legislation, which West Lynn Creamery immediately took to court, and West Lynn was successful in getting the Massachusetts law struck down. So the reason it was struck down was the connection between the money coming in and the money going out. That was a self-contained pool. And in Massachusetts, there was milk coming into those plants from Vermont, from New Hampshire, from all over. But it was only Massachusetts farms that were getting the benefit. So Maine said, well, before anybody comes after us, we're going to change our program. And what we did, oh, hello. Okay. So anyway, we changed our program by making the account that the money came into, instead of being a dedicated account, it went into the state's general fund. So the program ended up having two distinct pieces, one that brought money in and then a separate program that sent money out. And I'll come, okay, and then in 1999, the Maine Dairy Industry Association decided that they wanted to be a more robust organization. So they brought language to the state legislature to be incorporated as an entity with a mandatory checkoff and mandatory membership. And so that was passed in 2000. And MDIA gets funded with a 1 cent per hundredweight monthly fee from all dairy farmers, again, shipping into commercial markets. That's conventional, organic. You do have to be a cattle dairy, not sheep and goats, but all that. And so in 2001, they took the step to go from a volunteer organization to having staff as a consultant, 10 to 15 hours a month. So I was hired in 2001. And then over the course of time, the workload rapidly increased to the point where in 2008, the group decided to convert the position from a consultant to a full-time salaried staff position. And like I say, I've been the staff person since 2001. Okay. Yeah, this is stuff we all know. So the Northeast Dairy Compact, in slightly before here, was ratified and put into place in the New England states. When that happened, Maine repealed its dairy farm stabilization and vendor programs. And then we all know what happened with the Northeast Dairy Compact. So because of a lot of different things, some of it was the economy, some of it was and impacts from 9/11, some of it was changing the federal milk marketing formulas. The time from about 2003 on has been incredibly tumultuous. And so looking at in 2003, MDIA really started looking at ways to stabilize the price and take some of the big dips out of the marketplace. The justification for this was, it was not just dairy farmers who are getting hurt, but our fuel dealers, fertilizer, equipment, vets, but more importantly, even than that, the general health and economy of our rural communities, because dairy has traditionally been spread throughout the entire state of Maine. And so its impact is fairly significant. And money never stays in a dairy farmer's pocket. It goes out to pay the bills. And so it's a huge economic driver. So again, did a lot of research, conducted a public opinion poll asking Maine consumers how they felt about supporting dairy farms. Would they be willing to pay more? Doing lots of research to try to figure out what options we might have. And we had that kind of coalesce about the same time we had, we got the governor of the state at the time to call a task force to look into the state of the dairy industry and work as an official part of the government process to come up with solutions. So we did lots of things. We brought cows to the Capitol. We had some high profile events to kind of raise awareness. And we ended up, out of the task force, coming up with a program idea that was brought forward in 2005 in the form of legislation. And it basically, it was something to help bridge the gap between the price dairy farmers got paid and what it actually costs for us to produce milk. The program was loosely created on our old dairy stabilization program. I mean, the vendor fee, but it now took on a different structure. And we've seen that. So fill the gap. This is what happens when I run and start talking and ignoring my notes. Okay, so the tier program basically recognizes it is primarily based on, again, comparing the price that farmers get paid to what it's costing them to produce milk. And there's a recognition that as you get larger in size, you can take advantage of some economies of scale. So there were tiers created. Initially, when the program was put into effect, there were only 3 tiers. And then later, as a result of political discussions, it was expanded to 4 separate tiers and reflecting the various costs of production. And so these are the current levels. So any farm producing up to 16,790 hundredweight, all the milk that you produce up to that point, you are guaranteed a state safety net of $21 a hundredweight. And then if you produce above that, going up to 49,000 hundredweight and plus 79, then you get the 2036 guarantee for those pounds. And then your 49,080 up to 76,803, you get $18.01 as a safety net. And then anything over that amount is that flat rate of 1783. Now, these numbers were based on cost of production studies done throughout the year from the Maine Milk Commission. And these are the current tier levels in place. They were last amended in 2012. So we're looking at, we've got numbers in place that are about 10 years old.
Three studies ago, Julie.
3 studies ago, yes. Thank you. So as I said, we work this off a state fiscal year, which runs July 1st through June 30th. So because June's pounds aren't reported until July and will be paid until July, in June, everyone's production starts at 0 pounds and you start at tier 1. And however long it takes you, however quickly or slowly you move through the tiers, that's what you'll get paid. So we have some of our larger farms who might move through the tiers in a matter of, weeks, days or weeks. You have some farms that never leave tier 1 throughout the entire year. It's not, so to compare the cost of production, we started with the basic price for milk, which is exactly what is posted in the federal order under the uniform statistical blend. So we start with that blend price. It used to be when there was the MILC program that Congress had, we would add on any MILC federal payment to the blend price. That MILC program is gone now, so it's a non-issue. But we do add a percentage of the overorder premium, which is reported by the co-ops for kind of what's being paid for milk. And we take the class 1 utilization of that. It's been $1.04 for a very long time, it seems like. And so that gets added on. The reason for the add-on, and again, the reason for the MILC add-on is it was important not to have any issue that it was looking like farmers were double dipping. In other words, getting money from the feds and then getting it again. You know, this is the premise of the tier program is not to make farms profitable. It's to make it so farms can survive the low periods. My favorite phrase is it keeps farms from falling into the big black hole of debt from which they can never escape. So that's the logic. So anyway, based on August 2021 prices, this becomes our base price, the 1803, for comparing, seeing what farms will get out of the tier program. Each farm's, again, because each farm's production is individually tracked, that means their tier payment is individually calculated each month. Now, thankfully, there's a spreadsheet that helps with that. Otherwise, it would take Tim more days than there are now to try to figure all that out.
It used to.
It used to. So here's basically how it would work. So the support level for tier 1 is $21. The price, the cumulative price, minimum price to farms was determined to be $18.03 for August. The difference in that is $2.97 a hundredweight.
Yep.
And so that would be the tier 1 payment. Same thing if by this point a farm is moved into tier 2, they would get, if they were producing and still within the tier 1 parameters during August, then they'd get some of this tier 1 price. If they moved into tier 2, they would get on all those pounds above 16,791, they would get paid $2.33 a hundredweight. If they had moved into tier 3, which has a safety net level of 1801, well, we were getting 1803. So those pounds would receive no payment. They're not deducted anything, but they would receive no additional payment. And same thing for tier 4. There would be no payment because the price for August was 20 cents higher than the safety net price.
The average price to all Maine farms was $2.21. I mean, tier payment.
Yep, that's
That's
great.
what it averaged out to.
Okay, so like Tim was saying, we've had 3 rounds of new cost of production studies since the tier program was updated. And as you can see, this was the 2016 study. Those numbers look a bit different than what we've got in statute. And then our most recent study in 2019, these also look different. The way the tier program was constructed, it really does rely on actual costs. I know a lot of studies and actually a lot of versions of programs in the past look at modeling what anticipating what the price is. When the cost of production studies are done, the researcher physically goes to the farm and sits down with the farmer and pores over the books. And, so that way we're comparing real numbers on all these types of farms. And, we make sure that we've got a broad representation from among the farms. Again, I will say, when the cost of production studies are done, it's only conventional farms that are surveyed. However, all farms, including organic farms, do receive the tier program payments. And there was a recognition that organic farmers have more flexibility on the income side in terms of setting a contract price. However, their input costs may be more volatile even than conventional farmers because of difficulty to get access, having to bring in grain, organic grain, or things from further away, and so higher costs. We aren't a ton of farmer. We're not the largest dairy state, obviously. So we're the 5th largest in Federal Order 1. But we just kind of felt that there was no public benefit and there was no industry benefit to try to subdivide our farmers even further than the breakdowns of the tier levels already did. So again, I'm getting ahead of my slides. Okay. Now, as much as the tier program, this is helpful stuff. But dairy farmers really want to be paid a fair value for their milk, and they want the money to come from the marketplace. Farmers do not want a government handout. They would rather the government weren't involved, most of them. So programs like ours are really intended to be a stopgap process. So put a pin in that thought, because I want to walk you through the next part of, or the second program that was created at the same time as the tier program. So the tier program pays its money out of the state's general fund. And sometimes it pays a lot of money out of the state's general fund. And so it was important that the dairy community and the marketplace try to put some skin in the game. And so at the same time the tier program was created, the milk handling fee was put into place. And basically the first entity to touch the milk, whether it be the co-op or the processor, or in some cases the retailer, they're the ones that pay the fee to the state of Maine. And that goes into the general fund. And again, the general fund is the great big mixing pot of state money. So there's no direct link between the revenue from the milk handling fee and the payments that are made through the tier program. So again, it's not money in, money out. It's all kind of meshed in the and
I think it's important to note also that the handling fee is collected by Maine Revenue Service, the same people who collect the taxes, people's income taxes.
Thank you. Very different entity handles that part of the process. So the handling fee there's a schedule to it. So, and it's based on the class 1 price. So the handling fee will float incrementally, going up or down by 4 cents for every 50 cents of movement in the class 1 price. And that's the rate. And that has been in place since March 2010. So that's been a fairly constant price. They did put in a maximum fee rate. It will never go above 84 cents a gallon. There were some times where the milk price got pretty low. This
At
was
at the same time, Julie, if you remember, they also put a minimum of 4 cents because previously some points it went to 0. They wanted to put it at a minimum so that we could catch up a little bit the state coffers when milk prices were good.
And it was helpful for the processors in the state and the retailers to have some consistency in those prices. And so that was kind of how that was.
I think it's interesting to note that this handling fee schedule was derived made by one of our processors.
Exactly.
We had a task force and they were represented on the task force and they came up with this schedule.
Yeah. And that's an important thing to bring together. When the tier program was developed and put forward through the task force process, we had members of the public, members of obviously farmers, processors, we had retailers, we had other folks from agriculture, we had folks from the ag infrastructure like haulers and vets and equipment dealers and feed dealers. So we had a broad spectrum of people who had an interest at the table to make sure that all parts of the system were going to be both represented and balanced and protected. So our program is kind of unique. And the primary reason it's unique is that we have the amount of milk Maine has historically produced is roughly equivalent to the amount of dairy products that Maine's 1.3 million people consume. And it's I'm not saying all of that comes from Maine because it sure doesn't. But it's an interesting balance, and it's a balance that the public recognizes, and they recognize the value of having access to some of those things close to home. And we've really been able to use that to maintain support. Well, this tier program was put in 2005, so we're over 16 years, and we've been able to maintain the support of our elected leaders and our consumer base. But low milk prices are not just a Maine problem, obviously. And so this is where MDIA really comes in. State programs are just a Band-Aid. So we had some farmers who were really hot to trot in wanting to look at the federal order system and trying to figure out why farms were not getting their share of the consumer dollar, why it wasn't coming back to the farms. And so we anytime there was an issue, we kind of became the one note pony saying, well, what about dairy farmers? What are you going to do to help your dairy farmers? And MDIA did a lot of advocacy, and we were able to get little things at the state level. We're able to get our congressional leaders to jump on to a couple of things. We're in the right place at the right time. So these are pictures of the Oxford Hotel and Casino in Oxford, Maine. It was put in I want to say 2010, 11, and it required a referendum to be voted on by the whole state. And the folks in favor of it were getting quite a bit of resistance. And so they came up with the idea, hey, what if we said that 1/2 of 1%, no, or 1% of the money we would earn through the slot machines, we dedicated to dairy farmers. And so, wow, okay. The best part about it is we weren't even asked to endorse the project. And so when it passed, we had this little, it's about, 25,000 to, 25 to 30,000 a month that comes in. We were able to create something called the Maine Dairy Improvement Fund, which it kind of fills in the gaps in other development. So this is for if somebody wants to get new equipment, make some construction. It's an assistance program. So anyway, that's an example of just being in the right place at the right time. But the federal issues were the big ones. And so we looked around for an expert and we found Dan in Vermont. And that began our relationship with Dan in trying to find different ways to that the federal order could be amended or reinterpreted that would be more beneficial to farmers. And Dan can share with you sometime just how chaotic our board meetings would get, where we would literally be throwing out ideas it's like throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. And sometimes we'd come up with something that was pretty good and we'd research it. And by the time we got to the end of the research, we're like, yeah, that's not going to work. Or it would take us a while to get the research and times would change. And so we had to be a little bit more flexible. Sometimes we went the congressional route. But we're always kind of beating the drum. Farmers want to be paid a fair price. Money should come from the marketplace. So, and that really, sums up MDIA's mission. So MDIA is, again, I told you was started in 1984, became an entity set in statute in 1999, 2000. All farmers are members. Raw milk producers and producer dealers can voluntarily join. There's a 1 cent mandatory deduction per hundredweight that is set in statute. It is collected and goes through the Maine Milk Commission. And the Maine Milk Commission on a monthly basis aggregates all of the penny deductions and forwards a check to MDIA. We also created a voluntary contribution program, which is what enabled us to do some stuff with Dan, and where farmers could choose to pay an additional 1 cent. The average really was more like 4 cents, so it was a total of 5 cents to MDIA. We had one farm that decided, he figured out that MDIA's efforts had earned him over 13 cents a hundredweight. And so he was willing to plow that back into the system, which was extremely generous. Unfortunately, that farm is no longer operating, but there is a lot that MDIA has been able to do that puts money back in farmers' pockets. So again, one full-time staff is MDIA. So I'm a one-person show. We do have a 12-member board of farmers, 6 of whom are appointed to represent all the various milk markets, 6 of whom are elected for 2-year terms on a staggered basis. 3-year terms on a staggered basis, 2 people each time. And then we have 3 ex officio board members who represent cooperative extension in the university, the Department of Agriculture and or the Maine Milk Commission, and the Maine Dairy Promotion Board and Maine Dairy Nutrition Council. And those three folks serve as kind of advisors to the MDIA board. So you see some of the expenses we have here. Activities. I spend most of my time appearing before regulatory boards, commissions, the legislature, Congress, agencies, departments, groups like yours, doing public relations, so funneling information out to dairy farmers, talking to the media on various issues. I coordinate the annual meetings, and if we have any issue meetings throughout the year. I work on policy development, research and analysis on issues, and always kind of keeping that long-term view. So my specialty really is on the in-state stuff. And that's one of the reasons we had worked with Dan for his expertise on the federal level and working to give a regional context. And so that has been a really educational effort for a number of years, which has helped our farmers have a better understanding of what goes into their check and basically how to manage it if they know, what's driving it from all the different areas. So I'm mindful of the time here. Right now in Maine, we have 192 dairy farms. Our Maine Dairy Stabilization, our tier program, has helped slow the decline in farms, but it is not a stopgap. It's not going to prevent anybody from going out of business if the financial pressures are there. Again, it's a program. The tier program is designed to kind of give you an opportunity to survive the low price times, but it doesn't guarantee profitability. So we have in Maine, we have dairy throughout 15 of our 16 counties. We have over 700,000 acres of dairy related land. We're producing between 580 and 615 million pounds of milk a year. Like I said, the vast majority of that is going into a bottle or a jug as fluid milk. We do have 55 organic dairy farms. That's 29% of our total number of farms. And we have 14 Horizon farms who are now in the process of working within the state and with the region to try to find a home when they lose their market with Horizon next August. This is the big one that is exciting for us. We have over 150 dairy processors. Now, we've got 4 major fluid processors, plus tons and tons of small artisan cheesemakers, butter, specialty products, ice cream, gelato, those types of things. We have a lot of direct to consumer processors. We don't have a lot of, I hate the word commodity, but for lack of a better definition, we don't have a lot of commodity processors in Maine. We bring about $570 million, and that's a rather outdated figure. But over $500 million in economic impact to Maine. Again, that's at the local, regional levels. These are the type of statistics that we employ to educate our elected people why it's important to have a dairy industry. These are the things, we often refer to ourselves as a hidden industry because we're scattered throughout the state. We have only very small pockets of concentration. And so we have to remind folks that we do pack a fairly substantial economic punch. So with all that jumping around, I will end the slideshow and end the screen share and say hello to all your faces again. And now that I have kind of given you all this information, we'll be glad to take any questions, either myself or Tim, on any of those items we covered.
Well, thanks a lot, Julie. You and Tim have told us a lot and given us a real plate full of things to think about. So it sounds like your farmers are pretty happy with what they have put together and the way you folks work. Have you lost many farms in the last few years, or?
Yes, we've lost. First of all, I'll start off by saying I get calls from dairy farmers saying if it wasn't for the tier program, they wouldn't be in business now. But we have lost more than I'd like, for sure. When we started this, when I started with the Milk Commission 13 years ago, we had almost 400 farms, and we're down to actually 194 now. Production has stayed basically the same. A lot of the land and the cows are still stayed right here in Maine and is still producing, but it's just the farms have gotten larger and the number of farms have gone down.
And, again, it goes to the efficiency of the farms that we're able to keep the amount of milk we're producing stable. It means that the farms that are remaining are continuing to reevaluate and try to improve and stay on top of things. But to put in perspective, when I was putting together this presentation, I found a previous version that I had done right before the pandemic, which had us listed as 220 farms. So, we've definitely had our share of losses throughout this process.
And that's mostly been the smaller farms.
It has mostly been the smaller farms. Another thing that's great, and I think is probably very similar in Vermont, but we're very proud that with the exception of 3 farms, all of our farms are family owned and operated. And the 3 farms are one at the University of Maine, one at the Wolf's Neck Center for Organic Dairy that Stonyfield has a relationship with. And then we have Pineland Farms, which is the result of a philanthropic entity kind of sponsors that.
The 55 organic farmers that you have, they're part of the total 192?
Yes, they are.
Yep. Any questions from the members? John O'Brien?
Thank you, Bobby. I just had a quick question just to give some context. Dairy is our probably number 1 ag business in Vermont. Yeah. Whereas in Maine, is dairy farming sort of dwarfed by, say, like the lobster industry or blueberries? Just some context to give us, where does dairy fit? It's obviously important with your statistics there of how much economic wealth it brings to the state, but where does it fit sort of in your agricultural scene?
Well, let's put it this way. We don't often put lobster and dairy in the same category unless we're talking about a lobster stew, because lobster is just kind of like the juggernaut out there. But the dairy industry in Maine and our potato industry jockey back and forth between being our number 1 agricultural crop. It all depends on, for dairy, what the price is over the course of the year. So, we still maintain a pretty consistent presence, but Maine is a very diversified agricultural state. So we have dairy and potatoes, blueberries, small fruit and vegetables, and then beef and all that stuff. We really are a very diversified backdrop. And in some ways that's been helpful to dairy, because the standing joke is that dairy is the anchor tenant in the mall of Maine agriculture. We've got a hand in the crop arena because we grow our own feed. We've got a hand in the livestock arena, self-explanatory. And so, we interact in a way with all of the other producers, either by sharing equipment dealers, supply sources, or we just learn to kind of help each other out. I mean, we have a lot of farms, especially that are in vegetable production, that the land was probably former dairy land. So, a lot of those connections make us work with the other sectors a lot on policies and other general things that aren't specifically related to dairy pricing.
Well, that's helpful, especially right that it's the same as potatoes, and everybody thinks of Maine potatoes, which is pretty big.
Right.
I
Yeah,
know, I was down the eastern states a couple of weeks ago, and I think everybody there had a Maine potato in their hand eating it.
they do a good job with that.
Yeah.
We've often been quite jealous of Vermont's ability to really kind of promote and highlight its dairy industry, because we do an okay job, but we have to share the spotlight.
Yeah.
And sometimes it would be nice to be top dog without having to fight for it, but it's everybody's got their different niche. And like I say, we're big fans of lobster stew when you put potatoes in it.
John Roberts.
I was curious, I was very curious whether your program benefited from the fact that you stick out there on the east side of the country and you're surrounded by a foreign country on, I don't know, 2 or 3 sides. And whether this was actually a benefit to you to have a program that worked well. What, I worry a bit. I'm a former dairy farmer, farmed for 40 years. But what I worry a bit about in Vermont is that, we're right next to New York. We're right next to, who could swamp us with their dairy supply.
Yeah.
So I'm not really asking I'm kind of asking a philosophical question. What do you think about does your program work because you're right out in right field there?
I think it's not so much that the program works because of our location, but the program exists
Because of our location.
we recognize the need because of our location. So you look at what's happening with Horizon right now, and it's a good example. They are ceasing to offer contracts to farms that are further away from their plant, and they're sourcing closer to home. Well, in Maine, even from our own in-state plants, we're talking, it's a big state, from top to bottom. And that's something we worry about. We worry that when there is milk coming in that might be displacing, not just displacing Maine milk, but displacing milk from elsewhere, that then it's going to be a wave that's going to come through, and we're the last spot. So the chances are maybe higher that our milk will be the what's left stranded in the end. Those are the types of things that we worry about. And that really is one of the the reasons why we were able to get this program in, we only can, if the milk is not processed and used in the state of Maine, it goes out through this little tiny spot at the bottom of the state. We only touch one other state in the country. I mean, we only have a border with New Hampshire, and then a whole lot of Quebec and New Brunswick, and a whole lot of ocean. So, that's just, I see where you were going. It's more, we look at it more as a defensive, protection to keep us competitive.
Yep. Thank you.
Randy?
Just a question to make sure I understand the implications of the system that you have. What would happen to milk that could be imported into Maine, processed by someone outside of Maine and produced by a producer outside of Maine? What are the implications of that kind of scenario?
Well, that happens
happens.
already. Yeah, so a good example is Gorelick. Okay. I'm not going to go through who bought what and who owned in the end, but Gorelick had a plant in Bangor, Maine. And then when Dean took over, Dean decided that they also had a plant in Franklin, Massachusetts. They decided to close the one in Bangor. But that didn't mean that Gorelick branded milk did not keep appearing in Maine stores. It did. They were just bringing it in from out of state. Now,
and to be fair, some of that milk coming out of the Franklin plant was Maine milk that was being shipped down there.
True. So, so the system, especially on the Milk Commission side of that, balances everything out. When it comes in with regard to the handling fee,
If it's sold in Maine, has to pay.
So there is a level playing field in all in Maine, in all of the retail stores. It's leveled off once it comes inside our borders. And so we occasionally get, especially folks who live on the border with New Hampshire, people grumbling, how come milk is more expensive in Maine? I can go to New Hampshire and get it for less. But on the flip side, when the borders are open with Canada,
we get a lot of Quebecois that come buy their milk.
Oh,
and
yes.
And their gasoline.
And chicken for some reason.
Yeah, I know.
Other Randy?
Well, I'm just guessing, you mentioned that Massachusetts had a similar situation that was struck down, and that you modified your laws possibly because of that court decision. Did that have to do with interstate commerce issues?
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And so as long as the problem with that is when the fee that was being leveraged on all the milk was going into a dedicated account, and that exact same money was going out to only Maine farmers, that was the conflict. Because farmers from out of state were not benefiting. The way to separate that was, it's not the same pot of money. We have two mechanisms. One is a tax. I mean, let's call it a duck a duck.
What it is.
It's a tax on milk that goes into the state's general fund. The state has that power. And then we have a policy program that makes supportive payments to dairy farmers. And there was no place within state government where they are lined up to see how it matches. Some policy wonks like me do that.
I also keep track also, but it's not officially.
Right.
Has your pricing system ever been taken to court?
Oh, many times. And we've won
So-
every single one of them.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Dan?
We're way past our time. I just have one quick kind of technical question. The milk handling fee is on packaged milks sold in the state, right?
Correct.
And was the old vendor's fee the same volume of milk, or was that a different volume of milk?
I think it was pretty much the same volume. It's just that the only thing that changed is the mechanism of how it was collected and where it went. Before it went to a dedicated account that
Yeah.
the administrator oversaw, and the funds directly came out of that and went to farmers.
Yeah.
Now it goes to the general fund coffers, and the general fund pays the farmers.
The other
It just
difference.
seemed Yeah,
Well-
go ahead, Julie, sorry.
That's okay. The other difference was the vendor fee. The first program was focused only on packaged milk. The milk handling fee is focused on milk at any point. So it even before it hits the package, because if it's coming off a Maine farm and going to a Maine processor, it's the co-op or the processor that pays it. So it's before it can be assessed even before it hits the jug.
Well, it's assessed at the first transaction within our borders.
Okay.
And what about dairy products? Do you have anything on like ice cream or yogurts or anything like that?
No,
That's the one thing I'd change.
well, and we have some board members who often want to explore that option to kind of broaden out the base of that.
Well,
handling
I
fee.
think it becomes even more important when you look at the consumption of dairy products. I just saw a report where cheese is far dwarfs fluid milk. I think the trend is more and more dairy is going to be consumed in some other form than fluid milk.
Right. And again, and that's the conundrum we face, because again, 9 times out of 10, because our farmers are shipping into fluid plants, we think fluid milk only. But we recognize that fluid milk is not the primary driver in this industry that it once was. That, our more storageable products, our value-added products are really the movers and potentially the future movers.
See, in Vermont, we keep about 60% of our milk here in Vermont to process into a little into fluid, but we only have 600,000 people. So that's limited, but a lot of it goes into products. And I was just wondering if we had a tiered system and we could capture funds from all the products that we make, yogurts and ice creams and cheeses and all that, we would be able to pay a tiered system of some type to make it more equal and help our little guys some.
Yeah, I've often heard when I explain the tier program to especially new legislators, the common feedback I get is that the tier program is kind of like a value-added recognition program. And the value that's added is not necessarily in the dairy product, but in the economic activity of the dairy farm, being in operation. And so it stands to reason where your products are, again, you're more on the cheese line. If you package it as a value added back to the dairy community, I don't see why some version of it couldn't work. The trick is, finding what works. What is the Vermont character? What is the thing that will generate support? I mean, when we did our poll before the tier program was created, we asked people, how many of you would be willing to pay a little bit more for milk if you knew it was going to be helping dairy farmers? 94% of respondents said we'd pay more if we knew it was helping farmers in Maine. I mean, wow, that was, talk about a slap on the back. That was great.
Well, we have kept you folks 20 minutes or 15 or 20 over your time. Are there any other questions by committee members? If not, well, we want to thank both of you for your generosity of giving us your time and knowledge, and we want to wish you well, and
Thank you.
hopefully we will come up with something so that we can keep our farms healthy and well. So again, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
You're
Thank
very
you.
welcome.
Thank you.
We look
Thanks, you
forward to
guys.
working with you on a lot of regional issues. So good luck.
Yes, that's very much a necessity.
Thanks.
Okay.
We're adjourned.